Welcome to another edition of GW Unspoken, where we discuss stuff we don't typically talk about, but probably shouldn't. We're here with Season 3, Episode 7, talking about community and culture and how we can actually get that real authentic connection happening with our community, and particularly our teens who often go through that pushback stage. And we often find it really difficult sometimes to work with our teens and maybe even teens within their groups. I think one of the biggest things we have issues with when there might be some conflict between teams is because of social media. Because often we feel very enabled, we're brave, but when we actually get face-to-face and belly-to-belly, we don't probably have that sort of stamina or that guts to actually say what we're saying on our social media. So look, tonight we're going to talk about conflict resolution skills, and I think that's a really good place where we can start talking about real community and culture and that big word connection, those authentic connections and interactions. So what are some really quick ones today? All right, let's go through some quick ones. And while you're listening to this, whether you're a teen, whether you're an adult, whether an older person, no matter what your job situation or non-job situation, parent, doesn't matter. I want you to think about these questions. Are you a listener? Number one, are you a listener? Because that's one of the biggest parts. There's a book I read and it's talking about how listening is 60% of communication. If you listen well, you become someone who people have, or you have influence over people and they want to be around you. If you are a listener and you remember what people say and you start that conversation about them, you can be a great communicator. And when you do talk, it's really important to talk to ask questions. Be curious. Find out about somebody else. We've always talked about showing empathy and understanding, but when you start learning about other people and learning about them and really listening to them and remembering things about them, you can have an amazing bond. And what happens is if you ever have a disagreement, it may not even be a conflict, but a disagreement, because you've built that authentic relationship with that person, because of you being a great listener, there's probably more chance of you not having those real heightened arguments or breaking that connection and not being friends or having that really close understanding. So be a listener, talk to ask questions, be curious, and ask questions from the last questions. I know psychologists do that really well. So, they say an ogre has layers, or a donkey has layers. You got to pull those layers off. And I think, I've heard this once where if you ask the question 5 times, the why question 5 times, you'll actually get to the real reason of someone and something. So, you might say, hey, Fiona, I'm not very good. Why? Oh, just, today sucks. Well, why does it suck? Oh, I just don't want to be part of this group at the moment. Well, why is that? And you go 5 deep and you eventually get to the main problem. Just be careful how you do that, because if you say it just like randomly and robotic, you'll probably be weird and they might just sort of walk away and say, you are weird. All right, but if you ask that question, you get 4 or 5 questions deep of that why, you usually get the real main reason of why someone might be feeling the way they're feeling. How about a meet and greet? Stay connected. Continue to check in. And I just do this a lot with people where we've podcasted and they've really brought out their feelings and emotions. And I'll often do a text back to them, or I'll give them a call where I can so they can hear the tone of my voice. Hey, I was just thinking about you the other day. Or if I see something or read something, I watch something on a YouTube clip about social emotional wellbeing. Hey, I just saw this clip and I was thinking about you. I was actually looking at Arnie's 7 habits and I think this is one of the things that reminds me of you. All right? It builds that connection. It's really important that you always stay connected to that person by being genuine, being authentic, and saying why that actually made you think of them. Obviously, hopefully that's a positive thing. Be willing to break down your own patterns. I know I struggled with that with a long time until I started reading Personality Plus. Why are we all different? Why do we have different personalities? Are you willing to break down your own ideals, your patterns? Because if you're open and if you don't feel like you want to be open, or if you think your belief or way of life is right, then you've probably already got a little barrier subconsciously already. So what are some patterns you can break down and go, okay, let me just be open and think of it from this person's perspective. Maybe that's right. I was lucky enough to work for 4.5 years out in Indigenous education out west, up Northwest Corridor. One was up at Normanton for 6 months and one was out at Cloncurry near Mount Isa for 4 years. One of the best teaching places I had, connections there, very nervous. I knew a lot of teachers who didn't get along very well with the community out there. And all I did was try and build relationships. And that was the key, to listen and invest into them, look at their way of life, got invited to barbecues, was authentic. And then that was the thing that actually helped me connect with that community. Still made a lot of mistakes, but that was a underlying factor. So it was important to actually be open, think of their beliefs, think of their ideals, their way of life, and try and break down or question your own patterns, because usually your patterns have been designed or influenced by people in the past around you, either those 5 people you hang around, or it could be from your family passed on to you. Because let's face it, most of us live with our family for like 15 to 20 years before we move on. So there's obviously some influence there. Again, last thing, continue to be vulnerable. Be vulnerable first. That also helps with being conflict resolution. Own your feelings. Say what's affecting you. Be assertive. Don't be passive where you just agree with everyone and agree with everything and you're a bit of a pushover. Don't be aggressive and say your thing is right no matter what happens. You're right. Everyone else is wrong. I believe in this because I know I'm right. Just be assertive. Be willing to say, hey, I don't agree with what you're saying right now. I think that this, and this. And the reason is this. What do you think? All right. And put it back as a question again, back to them. So again, you are listening. Last thing, kill them with kindness. If they're nasty, if they're abusive, if they're passive aggressive, if they're being gaslighters, kill people with kindness. Still agree to disagree. Say, hey, thanks a lot for the chat. I'm glad you can feel like you're open with me. Appreciate it. Don't agree with what you're saying. But hey, maybe next time we'll catch up again and we might both have different opinions. All right. Kill people with kindness. They've got nowhere to go because a lot of people just want the battle. Yes, there's still a stage where you have to be assertive and say how you feel and actually take back the line. But if you're killing them with kindness and be the better person each time, it's nearly impossible for someone to have conflict with you and engage in that because they'll soon get bored and go somewhere else. Be a listener. Talk to ask questions. Be curious. How are you going with that in your relationships? See how you go next week and see if it makes any difference. Thank you for joining us for GW Unspoken.